Right, I have 12:45 on the dot. We only have 30 minutes, so we are going to get started. We want to welcome everyone to our Careers in Career Ag Exploration. So glad to have you joining us. We also want to thank the El Centro FFA for their Career Success Committee being a partner with us in this, and for getting the word out, and also for recruiting speakers for us. So we also just want to remind you, like we did last week, that a career in agriculture has so many different aspects to us. We're finding studies from the USDA that tell us that there's a lot of potential in agricultural careers, and that there's about 56,000 plus jobs available in the agriculture sector industry, but only about 29,000 graduates to fill those. So there is a need for qualified people in agriculture, and we hope that through this series of speakers that you see really the wide range of experiences and careers that you can have in agriculture. There's a lot of diversity in the field, and of course here in California, who remembers from last week, where does California rank in agriculture amongst the states? Just show me a number with your finger. California is what? Number 1 in agriculture. So lots of jobs here in California, over 100 different commodities produced here, and Imperial Valley is a big part of that. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our presenter for today. We have Brooke Latack, Brooke Latack. She is a livestock advisor with the University of California Cooperative Extension, and she's housed here in Imperial County. With that, I'm going to go ahead and let Brooke take it away.
Okay, so hi everyone. Thanks for having me here today. I am the livestock advisor for the University of California Cooperative Extension. I do cover Imperial, Riverside, and San Bernardino Counties. So today I'm just going to go over what I do and then how I got here. So I'm going to start with what I do, and then that will kind of make sense of how I got here. It'll make a little more sense. So my job is livestock advisor. If you look at other advisors, a lot of them up north, they'll also have natural resources attached to their job title, but I do livestock exclusively. So if I want to venture into natural resources, I work with our natural resource advisor. But since most of our livestock down here are fed in CAFOs and stuff like that, not a lot of natural resources work for me. I've been in this position for 3 years now, almost exactly 3 years. And I work with all livestock, so pigs, cattle, sheep, but really being in Imperial County, being housed in Imperial County, that really means cattle. We have over 300,000 head of cattle in Imperial County alone, and it's the #1 commodity, so it's very, very important. But I do cover the rest of most of the desert of California, so really that also includes, I've had questions about ostriches, I've had questions about goats, I cover everything. And so it just kind of depends on who needs what and what the major concerns are. So I work under the Division of Agriculture and Natural Resources in the University of California. And really our goal is through research to improve agriculture, natural resources, nutrition, youth development in communities with the ultimate goal of improving the lives of all Californians. So we don't work exclusively with farmers. We also work with urban populations. We work with youth. And even me being a livestock advisor doesn't mean I'm exclusively working only with livestock people. I work with a broad spectrum of people because really everything interacts. People eat the meat that farmers are making, and that has a lot to do with health and stuff like that. So I do overlap with some other advisors and do some pretty cool crossover work with them. But the main thing here is that we are using science-based information to help people in California. So we don't give our opinions, we give the facts that we know are true, especially for the specific area we work in. So since we live in such a hot, dry climate down here, I wouldn't be giving them information that is applicable to much colder or much wetter system. So that's kind of the important part, is we're here to give science-based information to help farmers and to help Californians, really. So my job duties are kind of two main aspects. I do applied research, which is research that people can read about and apply directly to their system. So we do feedlot research that feedlot managers can take and apply in their own feedlots. So as you can see, we try to replicate what the industry is doing almost exactly. We bring them in at small 300-pound steers, and we raise them till they're about 1,400 pounds. And through that, we're doing nutrition research. We do heat abatement research, which is what we're doing right now. This bottom picture here, we have boluses that are about the size of my hand in 40 of our cattle, and it's constantly taking their temperature. And so throughout the summer, we can now chart what was their internal body temperature doing, how were they adapting, and how does that relate to their performance. I also do things with food safety. I'm sure you're aware that that's a pretty big issue. So I've been taking manure samples for pathogens. So I work in all aspects related to livestock, and that even includes things like forage studies. So I'm not an agronomist, but I work with our agronomy advisor to figure out what are the best feeds for the animals. You know, are there any different types of forages that would work better growing in the desert? And then I also do lab work. So that's what I did today all morning. I was in the lab stirring samples. Not super exciting, but really, really important to summing up what we're learning in the performance trials, doing that to prove that, hey, we're making this impact. This is how it would improve your system, you know, if they want to use it. The other part of my job is extension. And this is also important because if we do all this research, it's not going to help if we don't get that research or that information out to them. So I do that two ways, or many ways, but two of the main ways I do it is through presentations. So I'll go to conferences, I'll have workshops based on certain issues that I think that people would benefit from coming together and having conversations and listening to experts, and just talk about the research we're doing and things that would help them. I also have a monthly newsletter that I send out, or actually it's every other month now. And it just outlines what we're doing in research. Again, this is so people can take the science-based evidence and figure out how it would work into their system. Let me see, I have. So in all of this, I'm always collaborating with a ton of people. So other advisors, specialists that we have throughout the state, government agencies I work a lot with, commodity groups, other universities we work a lot with doing research. So I do a lot of work with a couple universities in Mexico because they have similar systems. So I have an opportunity to really branch out and work with a bunch of different people, and that opens up a lot of opportunities to some really, really cool research. So how I got here, I spent the first 26 years of my life, and I'm 29, so the majority of my life in Michigan. I grew up in like the fruit area of Michigan, right next to Lake Michigan. And then I went to school for 8 years in the mid-Michigan. And then 3 years ago, I moved all the way out here. So it was an adventure. So just to give you an idea of like the difference, it is much, much warmer here, and there's much less precipitation. I went from like over 100 inches of precipitation to 3. So it's been a big change for me, and there's a lot that I've had to learn in order to understand how things work here, how the livestock systems work here. But I wouldn't say it was a bad transition. I think it was a great opportunity to really learn about something new and to jump into something brand new, having been in the same place essentially my entire life. So in high school, my high school did not offer a lot of ag classes, which was a bummer. So really the only thing I could do is take a lot of science classes, and then my senior year they offered to have us take an animal science class at a local university. So I was able to do that, but really beyond that, I didn't really get to take any of the ag classes until I got to college. So I went to Michigan State, which is the ag school in Michigan, where I majored in animal science, and I was more interested in production science, or production animal science, so more of the meat, the animal protein side of things. And then my last year there, which was a little late, I got into research because I initially thought I wanted to be a vet, but I realized that really wasn't for me. So I thought, I got a taste of research and I thought, oh, that looks really cool. So then I got started, and I ended up spending a summer up in northern Michigan where we were testing gas emissions from grazing animals, which was really, really cool. We were also taking gas emissions from the soil that they were grazing. And then I also got to lead a poultry project. So I jumped right into research, realized I loved it, and thought, cool, I want to keep going. So I actually ended up taking a year off between my graduating with my bachelor's degree and then starting grad school. And I worked at the same lab that I ended up working in grad school, which was the Animal Air Quality Research Facility. At that facility, we measured gas emissions, so greenhouse gas emissions and non-greenhouse gas emissions, for animals. So each of these chambers here can hold one steer or heifer or cow, one horse, 50 broilers, and 6 pigs individually, not all together. And so here you can see this guy in the chamber. They were fairly comfortable. By the end of it, they were acting like they were in a spa, so they enjoyed it. But it was really interesting work, and I appreciated having that year off between my bachelor's degree and starting grad school because it gave me a little bit of a mental break while still remaining in the research sector. So I was still learning, I was still in that life, but I wasn't quite so stressed. So I got a little bit of a break. So in grad school, again, I got my master's degree in animal science, but the one different part of it was that about half of my classes were ag engineering classes. And that was what I appreciate the most about my grad experience, was because I got to branch out fairly different. It got to a point where most of my professors in both the animal science department and the ag engineering department thought I was in the ag engineering department, but I wasn't. I was in the animal science department. But it gave me the opportunity to look at things a little differently, not just from the animal science perspective, but how can we improve things from an engineering perspective. And so I got to work in what's called system dynamics, which is just looking at things as a system instead of linearly. And so my master's project ended up being about swine manure and applying swine manure on fields, which was really cool. I got to go to some really cool conferences. I went to the Netherlands to go to a conference, which was really fun. I learned a lot. And then because I was in ag engineering so much, I ended up becoming one of the main keepers of all of our research system, which I had no idea how to do that before. So that was a lot of trial and error and figuring things out. But I feel like I learned a lot about how to manage technology and instrumentation and research. And then also I helped out with other grad students. So here we have what's called a continuous culture machine, where it replicates the rumen. And so we fed the rumen and we were able to get gas samples from that, just to see what the rumen would be doing with different nutrient additives. So some advice I have based on my experiences would definitely be get involved early. I got involved in research my last year of undergrad, and I kind of wish I would have gotten involved earlier. I think I would have learned a lot more. Not to say that it was a bad thing when I got involved, but I would have appreciated extra. And that also means I probably, I would have benefited from reaching out and being more involved with my professors and student clubs and stuff like that. And also take a variety of classes. I really enjoyed being able to branch out from animal science, even though my focus was animal science and nutrition and stuff like that. Being able to take those classes, I think, really gave me a different perspective. And even if that's crops and stuff like that, it's all intertwined, so I think it helps a lot. And then be open to new ideas and experiences. This is not, my grad experience was not what I expected, but I just kept saying, okay, that sounds good. And I feel like I kind of got the best deal out there because I was kind of open to whatever was thrown at me. And then, yeah, I think that's about it. Any questions?
Okay, we are going to open it up to questions now.
We usually do one trial a year. So that's about 225 animals a year. And that gives us about 40 pens of cattle, which is fairly large when you're talking about research. That's not something everyone's able to do.
I have a question, Brooke.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering about what common misconceptions do people have about livestock production?
Oh, that's a good question. I think a lot of it is how they're treated. I think there's a lot of assumptions that, especially in sort of CAFO sort of situations, the concentrated animal feeding operations like we have here, the feedlots and stuff like that, it's just how they're treated. And a lot of that is just from never seeing one. A lot of people have never seen an actual feedlot. They've never been on them. And so they don't know what management practices are. They don't know how their food is raised, especially from an animal perspective. And so I've gotten a lot of interesting questions about how I feel about how they're raised. At doctor's appointments, I've had doctors ask me those questions and stuff like that once they figure out what I do. And then nutrition of animals, a lot of people kind of have these thoughts like, I think they should eat this, so I'm only going to buy animals that were fed this. But, there's a lot of ways to do it right. And I think there's we can give more information to the general public to help with that.
There is also a question in the chat about if you came from an agriculture background. You touched a little bit about this in your presentation, and what particular thing sparked your interest in agriculture?
So I was not raised on like a farm or anything like that. I come from a very ag-centric area though. Like I said, a lot of fruit though. Not necessarily a whole lot of animals or livestock. So my main, what interested me was more my work, my experience with, chickens and stuff like that. We had chickens and ducks and stuff. And I worked for a vet for 2 years in high school. And that kind of got me interested in, the health of animals and stuff like that. But I didn't really get into agriculture until I got to Michigan State. And I started getting into those ag production classes and I started loving it. Ooh, that's a good question. It's a hard one. Because so while I was at the air quality facility, we did cattle, chickens, and pigs. So I did all three of those and I liked them all. I think I like cattle the most. I'm going to be honest. I think I like cattle the most. I think they're just fun.
There's also a question in the chat that says, if you were to have a lamb to raise, what's your advice on how much they eat, how much sleep, and how much exercise they should get?
So look, that's a because you want to look at, when you're looking at nutrition, you kind of want to look at the animal as a whole. Um, I try not to give, prescriptive like feed X, Y, and Z, because it really depends on the situation. Um, but you want to just, the goal in nutrition for animals is to hit all of their requirements. And, I think that's something, if you want to talk about that, I'd be happy to talk about it at some point. Yeah, if you want to email me or something, or we can chat on the phone. But there's a lot to it, just making sure that they get all of the energy they need, all of the protein they need, all of the minerals and vitamins. And then once you figure out what you're lacking, that's when you can come in with supplements and, make sure that they're getting everything. It's kind of hard to say when we need to know what we have available to feed them and stuff like that. As far as sleeping and exercise, sleeping, they kind of take care of it themselves. They tend to manage themselves pretty well. So however much they want to sleep. And exercise, as long as they've got areas to move around, stretch their legs, turn around, as long as they've got plenty of space, that's nice and dry, not too muddy, stuff like that, which again is not a big issue here, but somewhere else it might be. Just so that they're comfortable, that should be plenty.
Awesome. Well, we've added your email in the chat list, so if everyone wants to make note of that, that's a way you can contact Brooke with more specific questions about individual animals. Very good. All right, other questions?
I have one quick question, Brooke. This is Miss Abadi Fitzurka. Nice to see you again. But I just wanted to touch one thing that I heard you talk about, but may not be clear to some of the students that are on the call, because when they think advisor, they think about their like FFA advisor. Mm-hmm. Could you distinguish what like the job title advisor means within UCNR?
Sure. So as an advisor, that just means, so there are several positions in A&R. So there's specialist, advisor, community education specialist. And so advisors are usually, they cover a specific area. So we're area advisors. And it really just means that we do research in extension for specific subjects. So I specifically do livestock. We have a water and irrigation advisor, and really we're not giving advice. We're extending that research that we do to them. And so we're a free system. People can come ask us questions. We don't usually charge for them. And so, but specialists, the difference between an advisor and a specialist would be specialists usually are statewide and they cover a more specific issue. So they're advisors that cover beef systems, they're advisors that cover dairy reproduction, stuff like that. So it's a lot more specific than just livestock.
Shanna did put her question in the chat box.
In the chat. Okay, great.
So she says, we have a new research-based class here at SHS, which is Southwest High School. Would it be okay for students to reach out via email and ask questions?
100%, yes, absolutely. So cattle are difficult because they're ruminants, so that's kind of a whole new, that adds a twist to what non-ruminants, they're pretty straightforward. The things go in and they go out, but the ruminants kind of a whole different environment to have to deal with, and there's a lot that's unknown about it. So cattle are difficult that way. For me, goats and like alpacas and stuff like that, those are things I don't have a lot of experience with. So I'm still trying to learn and get better at how to approach research with them and what would be helpful for everyone.
What kind of, you mentioned the use of technology in your research, obviously, but what kind of trends and technology are there actually in the industry at the site, like at a feedlot site? What are some of the uses of technology?
So the temperature boluses we're using or similar technology are being used at some of them. There's also some new technology that can help figure out if animals have any sort of lung issues coming in, and that's a big issue with a lot of the feedlot steers we have, because they're coming in really small and they can develop those lung issues at the calf ranch and all of that stuff. So having technology that can be like, oh, hey, this one has a lung issue early on, can help them manage it earlier, because really those are the ones that are going to have issues later on. So it's a pretty cool one. I haven't seen it in use, but I'd really like to. And I think there's some interest here about using that pretty actively. So those are the main technology. For the most part, right now, it's pretty, not a whole lot, but there's potential cameras. There's potential for cameras for identifying sick cattle based on movement and stuff like that, and identifying cattle by the marks on them and stuff like that, which could be really cool. But again, a lot of this is kind of in the early phases, but I could definitely see being beneficial later on to the feedlots.
We have a couple of last questions coming in on the chat box about the most challenging part of your job. Actually, let's look at a three-part. We well, most challenging part, hardest part, I guess that would be easiest, your favorite part, least favorite, those types of things.
Okay, so that's there's a lot of variety in my job, and I love that. I love the variety. I don't do the same thing every day. I don't know if someday, I know I start my day at the feedlot every day. That I know. Beyond that, who knows? It changes every single day, and I love that. And I love that I get to do research as well as extension. That's other extension services don't always include the research aspect, which is why I love working for the University of California, because they include that for advisors, and I think that's great. I love research. The hardest part, I would say, is learning, because sometimes people will ask questions and they'll just stump me. It's just, it's so specific and it's so unique, and I have to spend quite a bit of time researching and finding them the answer they need. So it's hard, but it's a fun difficulty, because it kind of forces me to grow my knowledge and learn about what's going on in my areas.
Well, Brooke, we want to say thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate everything that you're doing for the cattle industry here in Imperial County, and for being a part of our program today to just open up more options to students as far as the possibilities that are available to human agriculture. We're so excited, 5 years from now, to see what's going to happen with some of the choices that these students have made, possibly based on a conversation that they had in one of these rooms. So we're very excited about that. I want to remind everyone that we'll be back on next Thursday at 12:45. We will be doing Stephen McFadden. He was with Grow Guru, and they are specialized in irrigation systems, helping farmers with devices to help with their irrigation processes and saving a lot of water here in Imperial Valley, which is important. So there'll be a lot of technology, I'm sure, in that one explained to us. So make sure you log on to and sign up for that presentation also. I think with that, we'll say goodbye. There's a lot of thank yous coming in on the chat, a lot of appreciation coming in on the chat. So make sure you take a look at that group before you leave. All right.
Thank you for having me.